You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is John Rubino, author of several books on the economy, including The Money Bubble, and his website is dollarcollapse.com. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, Jim, good to talk to you again.
Well, talking about bubbles, the U.S. dollar, has it peaked yet? And if it has, where's it going to go from here?
Well, we got some interesting news on that front this morning. GDP in the U.S. in the first quarter was expected to be not great, but not horrible, and it was horrible. And we basically flatlined in the first quarter. We didn't grow at all. And the only reason we weren't massively negative is because inventories build up. You know, in other words, businesses accumulated a lot more stuff that they have to sell in future quarters, which will, other things being equal, slow the economy down. So it looks like we are either not growing at all or in recession right now. And so the dollar is tanking because the assumption has been that we were recovering in the U.S. and that would force the Fed to raise interest rates, which would make the dollar even stronger. And that's kind of out the window now. Because no government in its right mind tightens monetary policy when the economy is either not growing at all or actually shrinking, and a national election is coming up. And that's our situation in the U.S. right now. You know, we got a presidential election going on right now. And we've got an economy that has basically flatlined. So there won't be an interest rate increase in the U.S. for the foreseeable future, and that means the dollar, which had a lot of that expectation built into it, is falling hard now. So maybe, we've seen a temporary peak in the dollar, and the U.S. is now going to have to join the currency war and force the value of its currency down. And so that'd be very bearish for the dollar, and very, very bullish in at least U.S. dollar terms for gold and silver, because precious metals have done really well in every other currency in the last year, except the dollar, where it's down. And so let the dollar fall, and then we'll see precious metals catch back up and start to rebound again. And for stocks and bonds, the prognosis is a little bit more mixed, because equities have soared in the U.S. even as the dollar has gotten stronger. So normally a weak currency is good for equities, and but in the past year for us, the dollar, a strong dollar has been good for equities. So who knows? You know, we don't know what that'll mean for financial markets, but clearly something that was underpinning the dollar has been taken away in the last few days.
Yes, I mean, I've been told everybody in the world is trying to devalue their currency, a race down to the bottom. Of course, when the currency hits zero, what good is it anyway? Yeah, exactly. So they can get away with this. Governments of the world can get away with devaluing their currencies as long as people continue to see some value in them. And as soon as we realize that it is explicit government policy to make all of the currencies that are out there less and less valuable each year, a critical mass of people will form who don't want to hold those currencies anymore. Then the question is, where does the extra capital go? You know, if we're going to convert our currency into something else, which asset classes benefit? And traditionally it's been hard assets, you know, farmland and to an extent energy resources and precious metals and real estate. Those things have gone up when we lose faith in our currencies. So we could see a phase change where hard assets really just take off in the not too distant future if the perception of a global currency war becomes ingrained in middle American and, you know, middle class thoughts around the world. You know, rich people already get this. They're converting their cash into real assets like fine art and farmland and London penthouses as fast as they can do it. And so the question is, when does the rest of the world catch on? Well, here in Vancouver, a major office building was only offered to investors overseas. It wasn't put on the market to Canadian buyers.
Nah, because you don't need to bother with locals. You know the Chinese are going to pay more than anything a local person can pay for prime Vancouver real estate. So why bother? You know, why bother with for sale signs and local listings on websites and newspapers? Just put it out there in China. And I'm sure it's selling very well, right? There's probably a bidding war going on for it right now.
$5 million over asking price for units?
There you go. Okay. And that's yuan shipped to a Canadian bank and converted into Canadian dollars. Yeah.
Which are 20% at least cheaper than American dollars right now.
Yeah, there you go. Now, it's a great time to visit Canada for an American.
Yes, come on up and buy me lunch, please.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Yeah, and it'll be cheap.
Well,
or not quite as cheap as it was yesterday, though, with the U.S. dollar tanking today.
We'll have more with John Rubino right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
Welcome back. My guest is John Rubino, author of several books on the economy. His website, dollarcollapse.com. War on cash. Europe's been doing it for quite some time, where you're limited, I think, to a 750 euro withdrawal from your bank machine there, or from your bank account. What about here in North America?
Well, the concept of the war on cash derives from the fact that governments basically have one tool to combat a slowdown, which is easier money. They lower interest rates, they create new currency, pump it into the banking system, but they've been doing this with each successive bubble bursting for the last 30 years. And now they're at the point where interest rates are negative in a lot of places. In other words, if you want to put money in the bank, you have to pay the bank to store your money. And there are limits to how much further you can take a negative interest rate policy, because people will just hold cash then, right? I mean, if your bank is costing you 2% a year for a bank account, why not just take that money out in cash, put it under your mattress or in a coffee can or in a safe deposit box at a different bank, and hold it that way, because it doesn't cost you anything.
And in essence, that's what they're doing right now anyway, with these super high service fees for your accounts.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're doing all kinds of things to make it costly to hold money in a bank. And so that's leading people to respond by just holding cash, and that negates the negative interest rate policy benefits from a government's point of view. You know, if you need interest rates to get lower and lower to convince us to borrow more money and spend it, but savers are making it impossible to push interest rates down any further by just holding a bunch of cash, then you have to do something about that if you want to push interest rates down further. So they're making it less and less attractive to hold cash. They're making rules around the world that limit what kind of purchases you can make with cash and how much you can hold, and in general making cash less attractive. And now some mainstream voices are talking about eliminating cash altogether, just one way or another, making cash either illegal or so expensive to use that nobody will choose to use it. And so we're going to go, if these guys have their way, we'll go to an all-electronic financial system where there won't be any cash anymore. Everything you spend will be via credit cards or services like Apple Pay, you know, where you just point your phone at something and press a button and you pay for it that way. And that'll be convenient, and it'll be great for government policy, because then they can push interest rates anywhere they want to push them. But it will also eliminate financial privacy. Jim, you and I won't be able to transact in any way that the government can't trace in real time. So they will know where we are 24/7 and what we're buying and selling. And that's fine if the guys who have that information are honest, competent, trustworthy, and have our best interests at heart. And unfortunately, that's not generally how governments work. You know, power corrupts, and it attracts the already corrupted, right? So if we give that power to governments, if we completely eliminate or go along with the elimination of any kind of financial privacy, then we're giving absolute power to the government, which will inevitably be corrupted by that power. And so, you go to a cashless society and you get a dictatorship in one generation. That's pretty much a guarantee based on human history. And that's kind of what government's trying to impose on us right now. So it's going to be an interesting process to see if people get this, if they understand that cash isn't just this, this dirty paper that you have in your wallet or your purse. and that you can easily replace with plastic. That it's actually a means to preserving financial freedom and individual privacy. And you take that away and you lose something very, very important. So this is a much more important issue than just a technical question of how we're going to make our payments in the future. You know, this is about the power of government vis-a-vis the individual and the concept of privacy and freedom in the world of the future. So very big deal. We should all be paying attention.
Well, yeah, and it would, I mean, somebody says, what do you have to hide from the government? Well, the fact that every transaction would be tracked then means they would find a way to tax every transaction, wouldn't they?
Potentially, sure. I mean, the next step might be some kind of a global sales tax in which it's taken automatically out of every purchase. Now, you know, if that replaced the income tax, you could make a case for consumption taxes being a more equitable way of financing the world's governments. But that's not how it would work. It would just be, in addition to everything else, and a means to control you. You know, they can raise taxes. If they're going to do that, they can have tiers of taxes where if you're doing something that they don't think is advisable or favorable to them, then the tax on it just goes way up. And so they control behavior in a really efficient way, and limit personal freedom in a way that we can't do anything about if we don't have cash with which to spend money. Now, let them try this though, Jim. And we get a global black market, right? There has never been a successful attempt on the part of a government to completely eliminate illicit transactions. You know, when you define something as illegal that people want, they find a way to get it. And they do it with currencies that are outside the control of the government. So the first stage of a cashless society would see a massive black market in which other things are used as currency, right? We would start using silver coins again, for instance, and the black market value of silver would absolutely go through the roof. Gold would become the main medium of storage. You know, it would be where we would put our bigger pieces of capital that we don't necessarily want to spend right away, but that we also don't want government to be able to manipulate and tax. And so we'd see a mass movement back to precious metals, which would then lead to a war on gold and silver. So I did a column on dollarcollapse.com a while ago where I think the last sentence was, and when the war on gold begins, the world as we have known it is over. You know, because by the time we get to that point, that means cash will have been eliminated. Financial freedom is almost over, and we're left using physical metals to exchange. And so we are at full-scale war with the forces of economic control at that point. And who knows how it turns out. This is really uncharted territory because we've never had these kinds of technologies before with which to control private behavior. And we've also never had the internet where people were able to communicate and educate themselves and meet like-minded people. So we'll see mass movements opposing a movement to a cashless society and the kinds of control that implies. So, you know, all you can say about the coming decade or two is that it's going to be really fascinating from a theoretical standpoint and really chaotic and really disturbing for most people. So this is not one of those interesting times that you want to live through, I think, if you have a choice.
And we talk about alternate currencies in the U.S., food stamps. You can buy a car with food stamps. In Canada, one of the major retailers, Canadian Tire, will give you your change in what they call Canadian Tire money. And you can, you know, and it comes in 50 cents, $1, $2, and you can go to that store and buy anything you want with that change. Yeah, this is true. You know, there's already a black market in government benefits, especially now that the benefits are electronic. And that would only expand. Of course, you know, a cashless society would be a poorer society just because government control is never good for economic growth. So you'd have more people on various kinds of welfare, which means the black market for those benefits would expand even further. You know, this is a mess that we're talking about. And there's no real positive spin that you can put on this unless you're a government bureaucrat hoping for extra control over people. Then it's a great thing, but for everybody else, it's really bad news what's coming. Sure, and how would I settle my bet with my cousin in Calgary between the Canucks and the Calgary Flames in their recent playoff series? I owe the guy $30, right? But how would I transfer that electronically to him?
You'd have no trouble transferring it electronically, but the government would know you did it, so they'd know you were gambling.
Yes.
So.
And because I didn't go through the official government lottery corporation, they would take me to jail for it.
Okay, well,
they already cracked down on community bingo games.
Well, in Louisiana now, apparently it's illegal to take cash in a yard sale. Where you're selling your old stuff. You can't transact in cash for private property anymore, or used goods. So yeah, all kinds of restrictions like that are being put on. So, cases of cigarettes, cartons of cigarettes, silver coins, things that can't be traced and can't be monitored. That's what'll come next.
Or people will trade drugs, not use them, but trade them.
Well, yeah, I mean, see, the war on drugs is a really good example of what's coming, because we tried very hard to make drugs illegal, right? We devoted, at least in the U.S., we devoted massive resources to keeping people from smoking pot and doing crack and heroin and cocaine, et cetera, and we failed miserably. There's more of that stuff around now than there was when the war on drugs started, which means it is impossible to monitor and control morality. And so when you make cash part of that side of the world, then good luck. It won't be possible to keep people from transacting in ways that the government can't see. And so we'll create an even bigger black market with even more powerful organized crime and all the dysfunction that flows from that kind of a world, So who will be the Al Capone or the Mexican cartel of private money when the time comes? And that'll be the big question. That's where the big money is going to be made, because they'll take a little cut of every transaction when you're trying to go around the government, and they'll become extremely big and extremely powerful and do the things that big, powerful organizations always do, which is mostly bad. So yeah, here we go.
And you'd also see a big increase in bartering.
Yes, yeah, and barter is incredibly inefficient. But if that's all you can do, then that's what you'll do, And so we'll see a rise in. Anyhow, this isn't a guarantee. But the forces are in place that definitely are trending towards increasing controls on cash transactions and the eventual elimination of cash. So it's a big trend, very interesting trend, and one that we should be watching closely and, making plans for, figuring out ways to get around it when the time comes. Of course, by doing that, I would be advising people to break the law, wouldn't I? So never mind. Forget I said that.
John, thank you very much for chatting with us.
Sure, Jim. Enjoyed it.
And so far, this hasn't cost you anything that the government controls or in cash. My guest has been John Rubino, author of several books on the economy, including The Money Bubble, his website, dollarcollapse.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Check out our popular YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.